Well, tonight is a very exciting night. I'm Alaina Claire Feldman. I'm the director and curator of the Mishkin Gallery here at Nordic College, the City University of New York. And I am so excited to introduce Mia Enell, our guest artist speaker for tonight. It's a very special moment, I would have to say among many things, because it is the second event that we've had in the gallery and live stream of the year. It's also Women's History Month, which is incredibly important, and we have such great, female leadership at Baruch and CUNY, and then of course in the artist community that we'd like to celebrate tonight. And it's just wonderful to have everybody in the audience. We have some people here in the physical Mishkin Gallery, and then of course an audience online. So I'd like to open up tonight by introducing our guest, Mia Enell, an artist based in New York. She's originally from Stockholm and spent her childhood between Sweden and Antwerp in Belgium. She studied at the Art Academy in Stockholm to get her BFA, and then received her MFA or MFA equivalent from the Art Academy of Beaux-Arts in Paris.
One of the Nordic school in Stockholm.
Nordic school in Stockholm, very important.
Yes.
And so you lived in Paris and you worked there, and then you've of course exhibited internationally since then. You've had solo and group exhibitions in Paris, in London, in Geneva, in Tirana, you name it, and Mia's work has been there. So we're very excited tonight to celebrate the launch of her new book, Mia Enell, Large Paintings, which I love that title, it's so appropriate. As well as to congratulate you on the 2001 Art Award that you received. I want to make sure I pronounce this right. The American-Scandinavian Society's Elfi Kantow's Alvin Art Award.
Elfi Kantzow Alvin Art Award, almost.
Thank you. Thank you. And so we have so many wonderful things to discuss here tonight. We'll be focusing mostly on the painting, although of course, I'm a photographer and drawings, like many artists, work more than just one media. And I thought that for tonight we could perhaps begin, because everybody always wants to know about artist process. We could perhaps begin by showing a video of the painting. Does that sound good? Sounds good. Okay. So, thank you for sharing that with us. I always think it's in lieu of a studio visit, right? It's the COVID friendly. So we're looking now at a beautiful painting that is in your exhibition. It's on view right now at the NYU Steinberg and Partner, and it's on view until April 2nd. And we'll, mention all of that again later for those of you who would like to go see it. But just to go back to the video that we just watched, I think people always want to know how do you start? How do you come up with an idea for one of these images? Because your work is so narrative heavy. How do I just
fragmented in that sense. It's not a story that begins and goes to the middle and ends. It's no beginning, middle, and end. It's just there. And the things come to me in very different ways, and I cannot fully control it. When something is strong inside of me and won't let me go, then it's ready to become something. It can be from dreams, from conversations, it can be from things maturing inside over time. But basically, when I start working, I need to be in the studio, I need to be peaceful, I need to sit down, and it's very meditative in the sense, all of a sudden, I can start working, and it is a dialogue with the painting back and forth. And there can be a sound, there can be a thought, there can be a color, there can be a line. No, it feeds back and forth a dialogue.
You've also said too, and I think you mentioned just now, that sometimes dreams play a role. And so I've heard people mention, and we'll go into this, surrealism as a potential avenue for the work, but we also see so many other kinds of influences. But maybe you could just tell us a little bit about how dreams and unconscious works.
Alaina, before we start, I think we have to switch the audio to the computer. It's choppy here.
Sure. Sorry, we'll just switch this. How is this? Can you hear us now? Technical difficulties with Zoom.
That's much.
Okay, great.
that's
We're
much
there.
better. That's
So
much
we were
better.
just, dreams
Dreams
and the unconscious.
and the unconscious, daydreaming, night dreaming, waking up. I often wake up in the middle of night with a thought, a word, an image that I write down. It's more a vision sometimes. When it's really great, it's when a vision is so clear that I can just make a quick note, a quick sketch, and go to the studio and work on it right away. It's not always like that, but words often are connected into this dream thing. And what are the dreams? Maybe the dreams are just the moment when we're the most relaxed, so what we think and feel deep down comes to the surface. Often that happens at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, right? When everything else, all the distractions are sort of out of us. And I often think of things, intuition as the sum of our deep knowledges. That is something that's gone through my mind quite a lot. You know how it is, sometimes your smartest ideas come when you're doing your shopping or cleaning up something.
In the shower.
Exactly. So that's a little bit how the work comes together. And the more I work, the more the work takes me where it wants to go, and I follow. And I sit down sometimes and look at a painting for a very, very long time, and all of a sudden it becomes clear what I need to do. The colors, I try them. Sometimes I do small tests, a little sketch test. Although I don't cook much, it's a little bit like cooking,
Yeah. No recipe.
I never work after recipe.
So I'd love to talk about this award. Congratulations. It's for incredible women who contributed to art for quite a substantial amount of time, and who committed such a substantial body of work also to share with the public. And I was thinking about your connection to Scandinavia, and I would love if you could tell us a little bit about your background, because you grew up in a family of painters.
Yeah.
And that must have been,
It was intense.
quite heavy.
It was really, when you're a child, you don't have nothing to compare to directly except your friends maybe. But both my parents were artists, oil painters, and we had 3 homes in the late 60s, 70s, early 70s. My parents, they lived, I was born in Gothenburg actually. I lived in Stockholm just before I moved abroad, but later on. But as a child, my parents had a home, we had a home in Gothenburg, and then a group of artists did Back to Nature and bought places deep in the woods of Sweden, up by the Norwegian border. And my parents bought a mission church with the big room was the art studio.
That must have influenced scale of the paintings that were being made in
Yeah, I mean, it was, for me, it seemed like the only life possible. I was under something, having my little art studio while my parents were painting. And then they had a home and a studio in Antwerpen in the also late 60s and through 1970s, where the energy was a little different. So I don't know how much I should go into it, but I have childhood memories of, you mentioned Scandinavia, the darkness. Sweden is wonderful. It has this complex combination of seriousness, darkness, mixed with light and sense of humor. And
Right, that Scandinavian dark humor is
Yeah.
very typical. And I think it really shows in your work.
And it has, you know, a lot to do also with the weather in Sweden. There is very little daylight all winter, which is 9 months almost, and then 3 months there is no nighttime, so it's quite extreme. And I remember the group of artists. As a child, I had no iPad, I had no toys with me, but the artists would go out together with my parents, artist friends and my parents would go out and do very serious charcoal drawings of clear cuts in nature, and I would have to sit on a stump of a tree and wait while all the artists were working for hours and hours, these dark charcoal drawings. And then the contrast in Antwerp and going to visit artists' homes or collectors' homes with these 1970s designy apartments with orange shapes and happy colors, and where
So
you
it's
were
big
allowed
contrast.
to jump around and have fun. Yeah, so these two things were very important because they were also a contrast between more a darker seriousness and a more 1970s.
And you mentioned both that your parents were painters.
Yeah.
And that your father was also, he was quite well known.
Yeah.
I mean, his work still is quite known in Scandinavia, but it must have been difficult to have a path with like a father who was kind of this, you know,
He was
patriarchal
intense.
painter figure. I mean, it's also, we should acknowledge, right? We're here to celebrate
Yeah.
women, but growing up in the shadow of this painter, you also broke away from that a little bit because you weren't immediately painting, right?
No, I mean,
Well,
my
you were
fa-
always
My
painting, but
father passed away when I was 12 years old. He was an amazing painter, and it was a fantastic character, very charismatic, but at times very difficult and very exhausting. So at age 12, I remember sitting at my father's funeral where all these intellectual Swedish people, writers, artists, musicians, were all getting drunk and being wild. And I was thinking, I'm tired. You know, I want a normal life. I love art. I always loved art, but I thought I wanted to you know, think about different things. So I was very much into horse riding. Then I wanted to go to law school to do something very different, and I got into law school. And then 2 weeks before starting, I had this terrible hesitation. So I spent a year as assistant art teacher at the high school and working in an ad agency and taking art classes, acting classes, music, singing, everything. And eventually I went to Lyckvik School in Stockholm. And from there on, I applied to the Art Academy in Paris. And
It's
more
history.
studies disappeared, and I was into the arts. And I mean, I always loved art. I always loved looking at art, living with art, being very close to artists, but it wasn't really I just needed a break for
Right.
a while, and then it brought me back into it naturally, you know.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, for people who might be watching who are still kind of figuring out where their place as an artist might be, because there's no single path, there's no single trajectory
no.
that one takes to be an artist. You know, you were there in this family and then had to find your own. You had to kind of break away and find your own way.
But I knew certain things. I didn't have this strange dream of becoming an artist. Once I directed myself in that direction, I knew what it would take, that it's deep philanthropy, from artist side, that you do it for the real reasons. And I remember my father always insisting on being honest, being who you are, having your own voice when you paint, and all those things stayed in me. You know, I saw how they used color. When I was 3 years old, I didn't get kid-friendly paint. I got oil paint and turpentine, you know, to work with. So I already knew what I was getting into when I went there, and I had good fortune of having amazing teachers in Paris. And also the French world was very much the opposite to the Swedish teaching when it came to classical studies, for example, which I did the first year and a half, 2 years when I came to the Art Academy in Paris. How you study after model, how you work still, like all that was how the touch, you know, how you hold paintbrush. I mean, in Sweden, Germanic countries, you go for it. It moves quickly. And in France, you know, I was told that pencil has to walk as a fly over the paper, you know. So it was even figuring out physically how to handle and be with paint and the media you're using.
Right.
So that was fun.
And then you were working in Paris for another artist.
Yes, I graduated and then I stayed on. I graduated in 92, 93, and then I stayed on, well, a total of 10 years in Paris. And the last 2 years, I had an artist residency at Cité des Arts, and I also worked extra for a wonderful artist as her assistant, Annette Messager. And for me, that was extremely important to see a woman artist who was French and be in her home, her studio. Also, Christian Boltanski, her long-term partner, was there, and to be in, I had been in my parents' studio in a family, but really be allowed there. And Annette was and is such a, not only a great artist, but such a great person that I think what I learned maybe most from her was her way of always insisting and being focused on the art. I mean, she's a woman being an artist, but she, through difficulty, she always kept the focus at the art, in the art. And she's also a very nice person to be around. So
It's your chosen family, in a sense.
well, yeah. I mean,
And then you moved to New York.
yeah.
Why did you move to New York?
Well, I came from Sweden. I had lived between international, Sweden, Belgium, and then France. And then it felt like the right time to go to New York for me. I had tried a couple of times and the doors wouldn't open. It wasn't the right time. And then in 97, things were possible. And also in the time I went to the Art Academy, when I switched to the more contemporary studio, from the classical to the contemporary, I was among the few painting, because it was really not cool to paint in Paris at the time. It was photography. I did photography too. It was installation, video just started, did some video. But painting was really, really not cool. And I kept on doing it anyway, my way, you know. And in New York, people were still painting. And in London too, and in Düsseldorf and everywhere. So I think, I don't know, I thought New York was a great place. It was very international, very mixed. It was, again, a different culture. So I like putting myself in new places that I don't know. I like that.
Let's go back to a moment. I really want to touch upon this Scandinavian dark humor. I'm very interested in this. I'm a fan of, dogma films, and there's a big difference, because American humor and comedy is very optimistic, and I find Scandinavian dark humor is very pessimistic. And if we look at the work right now, Man-Eater, Mother Earth, I think that's a pretty good example of Scandinavian dark humor in your work. And we were talking earlier about like Kierkegaard, who's this very famous Danish philosopher who writes about irony and the difference between irony and humor. But there's maybe Scandinavian humor is a little bit closer to irony, there's a power dynamic kind of poking fun at something that might have, more weight than something else perhaps. But yeah, I'm really curious to hear how you let humor say something that you otherwise maybe wouldn't say, or how, this dark humor influences.
But when we talk about it, then I think in different ways from when I'm working, because then I
Right.
try to cut out my head a little bit so it's more spontaneous.
Right.
And
This is the dreams that we were talking about, right?
and
The-
also even daytime when I was doing this drawing of this mouth with this, and I cracked up laughing. It's sort of man-eater.
but also Mother Earth.
And
which,
then the
that's
Mother
serious.
Earth came into it, because I realized at the top of the painting, I don't know if you can see it, starts looking like a landscape, the lips. And then for me, I saw maybe an icy lake or something. And then I was working on this painting for quite a while, and all of a sudden it seemed obvious that the man or a person had to be into that mouth. And then Mother Earth, man-eater. And from there I keep thinking about the cycle of life, how Mother Earth absorbs us. We're born, we live, we die, and all of a sudden these more serious thoughts or attitudes come into the work. So somehow it manages to fit there, and as you said, the humor allows to go much closer to subjects that can be uncomfortable, because I do think with the darkness in Sweden that people do need to crack up a little bit and have a little distance to it. So we make fun of things a little bit, but we can also go full force into anguish with no problem at all.
Right.
I mean, we can face the anguish and stay with it.
It's
till
not
it-
as candy coated in America, right? I mean, like
I can talk about different cultures. I mean, just if you take a simple thing, and don't really know how we do it in Sweden. When we don't eat breakfast at home because it's cold outside. But in Paris, you would go to a cafe and then you would ask someone how they're feeling, and they would complain about how everything is bad. And by the time they leave the cafe, they've gotten it off their shoulders. Where in New York, I noticed when I came here, everybody asks how you're doing. Great, whether you're doing great or not. But that's also because New York City is a different city, So yeah, we.
Well, let's look at another work where humor is very present. I
Oh, yeah.
love this
This
work.
one, yeah.
It's hilarious. Butterflies,
Yeah,
and it is what it is. But you also
Yeah.
have these dark clouds interspersed. between-
exactly, but just a few.
Just a few.
Yeah, there is hope. So I was thinking that what we've been going through with COVID is a bit, crazy, stupid times. So I needed to do a stupid painting for stupid times. So this butt, and then space, and then flies, butterflies. So it's these butts that are like butterflies that are flying around, and we're looking out up into the sky, and they're happy and flying around there. So
It
that's
also,
okay.
when I think of it as a COVID pain, I also think of how I've like been sitting on my butt,
Yeah.
for 2 years in front of my, computer, and this kind of reminds me of being stationary, but then of course there's freedom, right? They're moving around, they're flying. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
And
a
you-
way we feel, I think, about being stationary. For me, that's
Yeah.
a
And
way
as I
to
have
read it.
just started working on this, when I was talking to other artists, painters, and they had also done stupid paintings for stupid times. So it was something I think we needed to do a little bit to breathe from
Right.
certain things, right? So
And then the next painting, I absolutely love. Hot flashes.
yes, this one. First time I came across, a lot of Americans have seen Wonder Woman, but the first time I came across Wonder Woman was in Paris when Dora Birnbaum was lecturing at the art academy. So I saw that. And the other, last year I was thinking about that video again, and then I thought, Wonder Woman must be much older now. So this pow, it's hot flashes, you know, she's going, and I thought, you know, hot flashes, hot being popular. If someone is hot, it's hot is being sexual, and then hot flashes is menopause. It's not
physically being
yeah,
hot.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
No, I
so
love
I
this.
just had fun doing that painting, you know.
It manages to both kind of take back and co-opt and make powerful that which women are taught to be embarrassed by. And it also points to the, like, almost the feminist legacy of art history in Dara Birnbaum's work at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I want to touch on that I love about your work is that it's really generous. I find that your wordplay and the kind of brightness, the narrative that you use, you really allow the viewer to bring their own history into reading your work. You know, a lot of artists' work is very didactic, and I find that maybe it's because there's this dreamlike, you know, way that you produce work, but I find that it's very much Mia Enell's painting, and it's your brush and it's your style, and we know that, and you set something up for us. But as a viewer, I really do. I can't think of a better word than like generosity, because it allows me to have fun and play with looking at this work as well.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of keeping the work open has been with me from the very, very beginning. I didn't want to settle into a series of work that look the same, do the same. I was curious. I was searching for things, but I was searching to find my own voice, but not in a too quick way. And I think very often people come to me and tell me what they see in the work, and I like that because it happens not often, but no, it happens that people actually see things I haven't thought about yet. And there was a period early on in the 90s where I was concerned by the work being too close to me, too personal, me, myself, and I. And then I realized the more I deep dive into it, the more it opens up and becomes universal. Because, you know, we all know that we are unique, but also all the same. But I notice I've seen that as time goes by, and yeah, it's fun to hear what other people see, and there is nothing wrong or right about it. It is what it is. They're a bit like kids that have grown up. They have their own life, and they meet people, so they
have their own social circles.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you configure them in a different exhibition, they've become, you know, teenagers now.
Yeah, or even grown-ups. I mean, they once they're done, they're gone. They have their own presence, and that's something also in the show that what I notice is that these these paintings are. I was going to say people. These paintings you can feel them in the space. Somehow.
That's a plug to go see the exhibition.
Yeah.
That's on view on Walker Street.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to go back. I want to show another painting, Tomatoes and Night Sky. This work, as well as your others, but I think this one does a really beautiful job. If you can see the kind of texture, the different textures, and also elements of like flatness and the organic shapes. And you mentioned earlier when you were a child, you know, some of these interiors that you were playing around in. And I'd love to hear from you about the kind of style and or kind of the bright colors and maybe where that comes from. I mean, I asked you once, do you just, because that red looks so much like a cadmium that you would just squeeze right out of a tube, but what's your process in kind of coming up with color? And then how has color maybe seeped into your work through your own history?
And that's what you're telling me connects with a lot of other things. Work with space, work with movement in the payment. Paintings are very, they're kind of there, but there is also a little bit of movement. So there are many different things going on with it. But with the color, how it started off, well, I was always in my parents' studio seeing how they handled color. That was maybe the first. But then it also makes me happy somehow. So I even remember as a child,
first grade, first math book had a colorful cover, and so it became my favorite subject, math, because I liked the book with the color. I remember it sounds a bit silly, but nevertheless, I realized even early on color meant something. I also had an excellent teacher, Georg Suttner, a Swedish artist that I went to yellow sports school and summer schools and did watercolors classes and color studies. So they were very based on the traditional Swedish palette of painting. Coming to Paris, I was going a lot to cinema, and I followed lectures on Godard, lots of them. There is a contrast with color too.
I can so see Godard in this. Yeah.
I mean, I do love Bergman, Seven Seal, the black and white movies, and Dreyer very much too. They're very painterly, the compositions and so on. But I also discovered Almodovar, and that is
The
of course
red, I think of
the
red,
blues
yeah.
and how he touches very difficult subjects, but there is always this color that contrasts. So, and then I just all of a sudden it feels like it should be a red there. So for this painting, it was very intuitive. I did a drawing first, and then this painting is a little different, and I don't have a formula that I have to do a drawing first or whatever. But this one, I have no idea how it came across. It was just the vision, and I just went for it. And the tomatoes, nice guy, it's a bit crazy, but I kind of like. People actually see many different things in this one, and there is an area also at the bottom of it where there's a lot of details, like a little landscape. The first, I was thinking of painting a fluffy towel, but then I got stuck into developing it into an abstract landscape in a way. So
There's certainly a lot of nature elements in the work as well. I mean, the cover of your book actually.
Yeah, this one, yeah. There's the crying tree.
You can see the cover, and then there's this beautiful, this was the first image that we showed. And I think in relation to this and Man Eater, Mother Earth, and as well as even the video that we showed in the beginning, there are these kind of two rivers that go down the back of the women's spine, and they kind of pool in the center. There's always this element, even the tomatoes, there's always this kind of organic element in your work, which I think is so beautifully contrasted by these kind of sharp colors. And I was wondering if you could say something about the nature and the kind of organic in your work.
Well, from very young, I've always thought about life a lot, why we live, why we die. I've had, regretfully, several of my friends died very young. So I thought about life and death, and then also, which is so big, but then also nature. I mean, global warming, we know what's going on, and but trees also, I cut off a branch of a tree upstate. I've been upstate a lot during COVID, and that tree was bleeding, and I felt really, sad about it. And I also started reading about trees can communicate. I can't remember if it was in National Geographic or something. There was an article about they're telling each other when pests
I think the
arrive,
roots,
and
they say
the
that roots are able to really
exactly. So I need a good fact check on that one, but by sitting upstate a lot during COVID, the first 6 months, now I've been in the city a lot, but being upstate a lot, looking at nature, walking in nature, also growing up between city and nature as a child, trees are amazing. They are, most of them here in the city been around before we came to the city or before we born, and they might be around after we disappear. So they have, and they stuck in the soil, they can't move, that's also interesting. And then this crying tree, I was thinking to myself, the worst thing you can paint is a crying puppy, so I have to do a crying tree, I like to throw challenges. I take something that is impossible, like a crying tree or gold paint, and see if I can make that work, jumping in the empty air, trying different things.
I'd like to end by showing everyone a really beautiful series of works that you've been doing for a while now. The piece in Flux.
Yeah, and I want to say it's rare for me to work on a series, but this series has come across when I don't have dreams, when I'm in a moment of stress or in a moment of being very busy or something, and I need to just sit down and do something meditative. So I don't know if you want me to tell how it came across.
Well, for me, the message is clear. I'll scroll through these just so everybody can kind of see, and then I'll scroll back, right? They have different configurations, different colors, but it's always two, right? Two different colors. And then these four beautiful
or
pieces.
the void. There is a primed raw canvas. It's always primed, but you can see the canvas. So here it's only one color and emptiness. So it's the peace sign in Flux. I was 12 years ago, I started going upstate a little more, and I saw the peace signs everywhere. And
like Woodstock?
Woodstock, New Paltz.
Right.
And also remembering that I did, my parents did Back to Nature when I was little, and it was the high time of peace sign, really.
The hippie movement.
But it wasn't peaceful at all. I mean, it really wasn't. It was wild.
Vietnam,
Yeah, all my around the artists, being in the woods of Sweden was also quite far away, but it was a wild world. Anyway, so I was seeing the peace sign, and I was thinking, well, peace is never static; it always moves. So I was just, moving the pieces of the peace sign and just doing one after the other. So it's the peace sign in Flux.
It's a very simple message. And for me, again, the generosity, I'll just perhaps put my interpretation. It's also about the process, right? That peace is not something that's given.
You have to work on it, as we notice right now, carefully. So it's never static. You have to, or even between friends or neighbors, or
it can be the most intimate kind of relationship,
globally, right?
or the most global. Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's not. And here again, the colors I use because it's. I enjoy it. I enjoy. These ones. So these ones are very small actually, but they are also, I made them in the sizes like a t-shirt, small, large, extra small.
And also in drawings, right? You did drawings of them
A few,
too? Right.
but it's mainly been a couple of large ones, 68, 64 inches, and these ones are, I think, 13 by 15 and a half inches, and then they've been little ones. So this is my in-between activity. I always like to work, drawing.
So it's something that you continuously come back to, because
2009.
5 years, 6 years you've been working on it.
More. Yeah. 2009 I started. So I don't do it all the time. It's now and then in between. So today actually I was working on one, but then it can go 3 months when I don't do any, or maybe 6 months. It doesn't matter.
It's always nice to return to peace, or to return to a project that, kind of
meditative.
Right. Well, how are we on time? I think we can open it up to questions. I am going to stop my screen and open up the chat. Oh, we have a very active chat. All right. Let's see. Please feel free to ask us questions in the chat. Alex, you can also submit questions to Alexandra Tell, and she is going to help us moderate. Or if you have questions in the room, feel free to just speak up. Violet, I know that you're a museum and arts person.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at your crying tree that you showed. It really harkens back to the I think it's Northern Europe religion with the three that you can travel between, you know, like how often do you find yourself in specific religious symbology a little bit?
That's interesting. Yes, there's the mythology, and so I did a painting. I just came to think about it. Maybe 10 years ago was Sleipnir, like Sleipnir, the horse of Odin. But it was a female horse with 8 legs and wings that I did. So it pops up here and there, you know. Or when there are thunderstorms, I think of Thor with his sledgehammer, or with his hammer doing the sparks. Do you say sparks? So in a natural way, you know, Sweden is also a Lutheran Protestant country. I was going to say culture because it's traditionally even more so culture. It's not a very strong religiousness at all, but it's more a life philosophy, I think. And then it mixes, of course, Thor and Odin was way before that. And I remember visiting Oslo, what was it, just before COVID, and the museum there with the Viking Museum had these big ships, Viking ships, where they buried people. And they buried not only important men, but also important women back in the time in these ships. When they had served the ships, they used them. So yeah, just to answer, yes, I do pay attention to it, but it's not the only thing.
Right.
And, you know, that also makes me think, we were talking earlier about, you know, relationship to nature and trees in New York City, but you spent a lot of time upstate when, you know, during COVID. Did that change your painting at all?
There is, no, not my painting and not my way of drawing. There were thoughts that came in. There is one drawing in the gallery called Sociopath with just a line, and the eyes are 2 legs, vaguely, and some trees on the head. You know, you're alone up there with your among the nature, and also quite a lot of green has come into the work.
I saw that in the work that we
and it's very green. Everything's green up there. You know, the nature. Even if you trim down a tree, the next year there's 6 more branches. It's really very intense green. So it's very green.
And where can people? I think we need to plug the book.
Yes.
Can people pick up a copy of the book, or can they see it, you know, in person at the gallery?
They can see it at the gallery, and then there is this amazing text in the book
Oh.
written by someone. We worked on the text together.
It was quite an amazing experience. I had so much fun writing about these works. And so perhaps we'll leave it with that. We just have some, you know, nice messages in the chat, but no questions really. So perhaps we'll just, you know, congratulate Mia and give her an incredible round of applause. So again, the exhibition is at Bienvenue, Steinberg and Partner, and that's on Walker Street.
35 Walker.
35 Walker
Yeah.
Street, and it's on view until April 2nd.
April 2nd.
Yeah, so one more month. So you have one more
Yeah.
month to go catch it. It's a gallery, so it's free. It's right on the street. Copies of the book are available. And Mia, congratulations on the book, the show, the award. It is so nice to see these paintings kind of breathing life and in a family, as you say, kind of installed as a family in the gallery. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone at home, and thank you everyone at the Mishkin Gallery. And please tune in to upcoming events. You can follow us on our website or on social media at Mishkin Gallery. And I guess I'll announce a kind of quick sneak preview is that we are going to be reopening the gallery very soon. So check our website, check social media, open to the public with a very exciting exhibition. So please stay tuned. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody on Zoom as well. Take care. Good night.